That was a fun one. Imola, Ferrari's backyard. All the Tifosi there. Yet still, again, Joe Blake. Joe Blake frustrations for poor Charles Leclerc. Plus, a few more excuses for McLaren. We're going to tally those up at the end of the year. All their excuses why they are in the fastest car and not run away with this yet. And it was a bittersweet birthday for hometown hero Kimi Antonelli. All right, you ready to go, son?
I'm ready to go.
Hello, welcome to Hard Compound, the American take on Formula One with your hosts, Brian and Patrick. We just finished watching race number 7 of this long season, Imola. Start of another triple header, this time in Europe. Now, I watched the race on my phone in an airplane, which is amazing, but frustrating. And, I can get Judge Judy and CNN on my seatback screen. I should be able to get F1 TV, but apparently not. Oh, well. I got to say, I love the Alonso overtakes. That qualifying, he had a special qualifying, but he's in a garbage car. And once again, no points. All right, son, Patrick, why don't you give me your top 5 and your reasons why for the Imola Grand Prix?
Top 5 and my reasons why. Well, number 1, Max. Reasons why he's better than everybody. I mean, all you had to do was watch 2 corners and you go, oh yeah, he's better than everybody.
Yeah.
Which is insane. And, he just continues to do incredible things. I think most people have got to be continually surprised by what he's able to accomplish. Now, I don't think the Red Bull is so terrible. I don't think it's as fast as the McLarens, the Mercedes, or even really the Ferrari. Maybe I shouldn't say it's not as fast as it, but it's not as easy to get a handle on, it seems like. And he is somehow able to just get the absolute best performance out of that vehicle basically anytime he gets on the track, which is just crazy. And the gall he has to pull off certain maneuvers against certain drivers, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
And, he showed that again in this race and ran away with a win.
He did.
That nobody expected him to, and he probably shouldn't have. And he had no problems. So,
yep. And, I don't think Oscar was caught sleeping. I mean, Oscar had pole, but, it's tough. F1's not an easy sport. He's got to have lightning fast reflexes. Plus, George Russell was bearing down on him. And I think he made a critical mistake, which is just a fraction of a second, he took his eye off Max. And Max was like, all right, thank you. I'm getting by.
Yep. Pretty incredible. And after that, I mean, he didn't look back. Oscar, Lando couldn't catch him. Nobody could catch him. Even after that late safety car restart, it wasn't even really close. So pretty remarkable job from him. Then I've got Alex Albon, again, up in the top 5. He's just been driving so well for Williams. I think a lot of this is the expectation from me, at least to begin the season, that Williams was still going to be middling at best. And now not only are they consistently fighting for points, but fighting for top 5 finishes, which is quite impressive. And Albon, I think, has been outqualified by Sainz a couple of times now, but he still looks faster and more comfortable in the races. And, I think maybe in the last 2 races, he's scored more points than he did all last season. So, just another really good drive. Then I am going to say Lewis Hamilton is my next top driver of the weekend. I think that Ferrari really struggled until Sunday.
Yeah.
And, neither one of the drivers really could figure out how to make it go fast enough to even get into Q3, so they really struggled. But Hamilton during the race just looked fast, and he was able to, once he finally kind of got over that Antonelli hurdle, he looked like a man on a mission, one of the fastest guys on track. He was impressive. And what did he start? 12th? Got himself all the way up to P4 and closing in on a podium.
Yeah.
Couple more laps. I think he would have had Oscar. As an impressive drive from him, I think.
Yeah, he also got a bit lucky.
Well, I think he got lucky a little bit, maybe luckier than Leclerc and Alonso did. But, I think a lot of guys did. And he still looked faster than anybody else. And then I'm going to say Hadjar deserves some credit as well. He's probably been the best and most consistent rookie on the grid, which I think is impressive in a, middling Racing Bulls car. Beat out Lawson again, ended up finishing just ahead of Yuki as well. So pretty good weekend for him, all things considered. And then reason for last one, because I want to, Fernando Alonso. He qualified really well. That Aston looked good on qualifying pace because even Stroll, got up pretty high into Q3. And I think Alonso probably, of anybody that finished the race, he might have been the most unlucky of anybody out there. Yeah. But he looked good and quick, just could not quite keep that car, which has been very disappointing, up in the points. But it looks like it's coming.
Well, I mean, the Mercedes teams look good other than, Aston. And Alonso, to his credit, like you said, he had great qualifying. And there at the race, he was, those last few laps, he's like, what can I do? He was pushing that car, trying to get by anybody. That was fun to watch. So I don't think I take exception really to anything you say. Your top five were Max, Alex, Lewis, Isaac Hadjar, Fernando Alonso. So Max finished first on the podium. You don't have Oscar or Lando, which I think is telling. So driver standings, Oscar in first, 146 points. His teammate Lando Norris, 133. Max at 124. So that's just 18 back, right? No, 22 back. 22 back. That's, I don't know. Russell at 99. Kimi Antonelli, the only 48. You talked about Isaac Hadjar being the most consistent rookie. I'm not sure Kimi's doing well enough. He's looked good. He looked okay. But Russell 99, Antonelli just 48, less than half. And despite the bad luck, Charles Leclerc in fifth place, 61, still ahead of his teammate Lewis Hamilton at 53. Now, you talked about Max in that first lap, those first couple turns. It wasn't just impressive. I think it was a statement. Don't you? He said, hey man, if my car is even close, you don't have a chance.
Yeah, I think that's what he's good at. And I think that's kind of that championship mentality that he has, that Hamilton and Alonso have. Like, if I'm here, if I'm even reasonably close, I win. Right. It doesn't matter how hard you try, I'm going to win. And right now, I think that mentality is escaping the two McLaren drivers and the McLaren team. They're obviously very clearly have the fastest car regularly on pretty much any track in qualifying and race conditions. And they cannot seem to figure out how to consistently dominate. I think it's pretty clear at this point that they'll win the Constructors' Championship. It doesn't seem like Ferrari or Mercedes or Red Bull really are going to put up much of a fight in that race. But for the Drivers' Championship, Max being close. And like you said, in this race, he said, I'm close. This is mine. I'm going to win. And he did. And Oscar, I think, has a little bit more gumption and grit than Lando does. But he's clearly not on Max's level.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he is, but I think he's one of the top drivers out there. But yeah, McLaren as a team, they seem like, hey, we've got the fastest car. We've got a great team. We've got a great pair of drivers. So we're all good. I'm like, if that's how they feel, fair enough. But their drivers shouldn't feel that way. Their drivers need to be saying, we need to make it so I win. And I'm just not getting that. And I mean, look, another constructor's title for McLaren. That'll be great for them. That vaults them. I think they're just behind Ferrari then. But look, the constructors is not as big a deal, as the drivers' championship. And if you're a driver, you got to be fighting for that. So, so what did I say? 22 points behind. Max is 22 points behind. There's 17 races left. I don't know how many sprints. At least 2 more, right? I don't know. I'm always surprised when it's a sprint weekend.
Right. Yeah.
But so certainly over 17 races and sprints, less than 1.5 points a race he needs to make up a weekend. That's absolutely feasible. So he can win his 5th in a row.
Yeah, I think that is a tall order, but certainly possible for him.
I'm not sure it's a tall order. I mean, this week was maybe a blip, but the Red Bull looked maybe, I don't want to say a bit easier to handle, but certainly competitively fast against McLaren. They brought upgrades. We'll see if that continues. But if it's close, I just think over 17 weekends, just 1.5 points of Oscar, let's say. I mean, that seems very feasible.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're saying, it's just 1.5 points, you have to beat him out on a weekend. So it's basically, 1 position ahead every weekend. That in and of itself sounds reasonably easy, right? But this is a team that has a car that is just clearly better than everybody else. And 2 very competent drivers. It's maybe not as straightforward as just like, it's 1.5 a weekend.
Right. Well, so let's talk about someone else then. I said Kimi Antonelli, he's been reasonably consistent for a rookie. Done fine as a rookie, but he's got half the points of George Russell. That's too far back. So I don't want to say he's under any sort of threat to lose his seat. Certainly not this year. Toto just does not operate that way, but I don't know. I mean, George has been very consistent all season long. A bit less so this weekend, but that's a big gap.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a big gap. I don't think it's like so outrageous though, right? If we're talking about, a teammate that has half as many points as the other, Carlos Sainz has 11 points to Alex Albon's 40, right? He's got a quarter of the points, and he's a veteran, should not be that far back, right? So
True.
I think Antonelli probably should be doing better. He got unlucky this weekend with an issue to his vehicle. It was out of his control, right? So couldn't score any points there. I agree with you to some extent, right? He should start improving. We should start seeing him regularly competing for those top 5 spots and podiums. But I think solely based on points accumulation, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, saying, he's doing fine, acceptable for his start to the rookie season.
Okay, though, then you mentioned Carlos Sainz. It's about a quarter of the points for the Williams team, but he seems to have found his footing. I mean, Albon's been with that team for years. Okay, and it's a Mercedes. Carlos was at Ferrari, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think he's out-qualified Lewis Hamilton overall this season. I mean, I think he's found his footing. That team is well set, I think, then.
Yeah, I think the Williams team is looking up. They're obviously that mid-pack team to beat currently, and it doesn't look like anybody wants to. Thought Haas was going pretty well there for a while, and then the last couple of races have been dog shit. So that's unfortunate to see.
They've been stuck at 20 for a while. I think we had a different pope when they last scored points.
But yeah, I mean, I guess that's true. Sainz looks like he's sort of started to gain a little bit of momentum. He's done pretty well the last couple of races. Sort of similar to Hamilton, I guess. It looks like he's maybe starting to find his footing a little bit, but Hamilton, at the very least is pretty close to his teammate currently.
Yeah.
Carlos really struggled to even get into the points the first several races this season.
Man, it's tough to, like, I'm still having trouble that Lewis is at Ferrari. I'll see a Mercedes, I'm like, "Wait, that's not Lewis," and then I'll see a Ferrari, I'm like, "Wait, that's Lewis." It just still doesn't work for me. Speaking of Lewis, his teammate Charles Leclerc, I've said Charles Leclerc has Job-like issues there with that Ferrari team, has had for years. He's had some bad luck. And I've said, I think he'll go down as the best F1 driver in history. They've never won anything. Not a team, not a constructors, not a drivers' championship. But I think we've been too easy on Charles. We're willing to take Oscar and Lando to task. I think, what was it? One of his messages this week was like, I think he sort of suggested he wanted to pit, but he didn't. And then Lewis pitted, and he was kind of frustrated. But I'm like, you know what? You're the driver. You've been there the longest. Sebastian Vettel wouldn't take that shit, and Alonso and Lewis Hamilton would take. They would make that team theirs. It's like, hey, you optimize. Your focus is on me winning races. And I think Charles just sort of lets things go. Like, oh, well, that's your call. That's your responsibility. That's your duty. It's like, no. You lead that. You drive them towards you.
Yeah, I think it's kind of that similar, maybe not similar mentality to the McLaren drivers, but he's got kind of that company man style approach, it seems like, where, he wants everyone to be sort of easygoing and just sort of make sure everything's okay. Everybody's happy. He's not going to rock the boat. And he's fine with Ferrari sort of dictating terms. I think, we've had this conversation about Lewis, especially coming in to the season. He has no issue rocking the boat and probably will upset some Ferrari traditionalists. And I think he's probably seemed like this weekend from his radio messages that we heard, he's a lot happier with how Ferrari reacted and responded to the last race, as both drivers seemed very frustrated in Miami. And they come here and Lewis seems pretty happy with how things are going, and Leclerc still seems kind of frustrated. So you might be thinking the right thing, where he's kind of frustrated, but he's going to take a step back and not do anything much about it, where I think Hamilton's much more hands-on and pushing for himself.
Yeah, and Hamilton's got the championships and Charles does not. All right, let's do team standings. McLaren on this one is just way ahead, 249. Nearly 100 points back is Mercedes at 147. Yeah, that's pretty surprising. Red Bull, 131. I mean, what is that? That's wow. 270. Oh, wow. So if you combine Mercedes and Red Bull, that's 278 to McLaren 279. Wow, I just noticed that. That is, Ferrari's at 114. Williams, P5, 51. Nice. Do you think the constructors' battle is basically over?
Yeah, I think it's over. I mean, McLaren would have to have an epic collapse, and it's not to say that it's not possible. I mean, Red Bull was quite a ways ahead last year after Miami, and McLaren just steadily chipped away at that. But if you think about how that happened, they had two drivers in a good car that was consistently scoring those podiums. Now, any of the other teams, Mercedes, you have a long time consistent driver in George Russell, can score you a lot of podiums, but you have a rookie that has been sort of up and down this season. It doesn't seem like they'll consistently outscore McLaren by droves. Red Bull, same deal, right? It's like Max can outscore him, but that second driver, currently Yuki, obviously, is just really finding it challenging to compete at a high level in that car.
Yeah, Yuki's a veteran now, and I mean, we can see that how hard that Red Bull is. And again, I think we need to have a sort of revisionist history with Sergio Perez. I don't want to talk him up, but he didn't crash it. I mean, he got that car across the line most of the time, and I think now we're sort of seeing just how tough that was.
Yeah, I agree. I think Sergio Perez, I don't know, he wasn't able to help Red Bull retain their constructors title, right? So I think it's reasonable to assume, even though Max won the drivers' championship, right? It's reasonable to say like, they should pursue a different driver. I just think they didn't pursue the correct option. So.
Now, back to the race. I mentioned I had to watch it on my phone. What was up with the virtual safety car versus the real safety car? Because I'm like, wait, aren't those the same things? Like, it just seems there still seems too many rules where it isn't that they're making a bad call. We'll watch a football game or something. Like, oh, the ref made a bad call or missed a call. Some of these rules, I'm like, well, what does the actual rule even say? Like, why is this time a virtual safety car and this time a real safety car?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking during or when they called the full safety car towards the end of the race, because I don't know if there are specific, I guess, rules regarding when to deploy a virtual safety car versus a full safety car. But it seemed like the incidents and the vehicles were off the track at basically exactly the same place.
Yeah.
Earlier in the race, they sent out a virtual safety car, which, just had everybody maintain their track position. If you're, 20 seconds ahead of the person behind you, you're going to stay about 20 seconds ahead of the person behind you by the time that virtual safety car ends, right? A full safety car, that doesn't happen. The whole grid gets packed up. You're right behind the person in front of you, and there's somebody right behind you too. So I think the reason they called a full safety car towards the end of the race is because they wanted more shit to happen. They wanted to artificially create, drama or whatever.
Right.
And they did it. It fucked Oscar.
Yeah.
And helped his teammate Lando. It kind of screwed Leclerc and helped Albon and Hamilton. I mean, some of these things are random, but also, there were strategy decisions that were made that also led to kind of some of the issues, right? But, I think the reason that full safety car was called, because it was very clear they called a virtual safety car early on in the race for exactly the same kind of incident in exactly the same area. I think it was to artificially generate more interesting things happening towards the end of the race.
Switching to the soft compound, let's talk money. Cadillac and essentially Audi, new to the grid next year. Cadillac's a new team, the 11th team. There's now talk there could be a 12th team by 2030. And we need to take a bow because we said back in 2020 there would be 12 teams. People said, it's never going to happen. We might lose a team, maybe Haas, maybe Renault. There's probably not going to be 11 teams. There'll never, ever be 12 teams. Now, 12 teams to me seems a certainty. And I can only imagine what the entry fee would be for that team. Let's say a 12 team in 2030. With all the money now flowing into F1, all these revenues all the teams are going to demand the share. I mean, what would the entry fee be? $2 billion just to join?
At least $1 billion, right?
Yeah. And then you got to put out $1 billion just to build everything you're going to need. My goodness. That's something. I also just think beyond the teams themselves, the money pouring into F1. I wish I could get a slice of this. But I mean, for example, Disney, Walt Disney Company just announced a massive branding deal with F1. Experiences, merchandise, branding, all the Disney stuff. I mean, that's huge. Although, I think there's a downside because Disney, one of the things Disney is great at is playing favorites. So they might promote the hell out of, let's say, Lando Norris and Yuki Tsunoda and say, hey, Lewis Hamilton, sorry, you're not our type. Charles Leclerc, sorry, it doesn't work for us. I don't know how they make their decisions, but they definitely play favorites. But I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot of money. But, this leads to a question, Patrick. I've been one of the biggest proponents of a spending cap. Before there was a spending cap and during, and still I think a spending cap is absolutely needed. I'm an American. I don't follow NFL closely, but I know the business. And that spending cap has allowed every team to be competitive. Teams in small markets like Green Bay, that's like the Haas team of F1, and Buffalo, that's like the Sauber team. They can compete for championships year in, year out. Because they've nationalized the sport, they share the revenues. There's a hard spending cap. That makes it great for everyone. Now, yes, teams like Dallas, Los Angeles, bigger markets, they can make more money. So yeah, you want to be the owner of those teams, but you can't spend anymore. But already there's talk of getting rid of spending cap. What do you think? Should F1 keep a spending cap or no? There are some reasons why you would want to get rid of a spending cap, but...
So I am like you. I think from a fan perspective, I like the fact that there's a spending cap, right? It should ultimately lead to more competitive racing and outcomes. I think we've also discussed before having a spending floor to ensure that teams are spending enough to be competitive. So I think those are good things. I think, though, that there could be some revisions to the cost cap in that I hear very frequently that engineers, people who work for these teams, a lot of the time they are not being paid very well. They don't make a lot and can easily go to another industry and make a heck of a lot more money doing the same job that they're doing for these teams, right? And that is caused by the cost cap. They can't be paying or offering these engineers outrageous sums of money to ensure that they get the best talent, right? That's kind of an unfair advantage, right? I also think that's not really ideal. I think there should be very clear regulations on how much the employees should be getting paid, right? And it should be reasonable. So I think that's one of the drawbacks of the cost cap. Ultimately, I agree with you. I think it's a good thing to have in place. I think there are certain areas where it can be revised a little bit to sort of improve the overall experience of everyone involved in the sport. Fans, engineers, drivers, whoever. So
now, the spending cap should go up every year, assuming revenues go up every year. A massive chunk of revenues come from TV rights deals, and usually, not always, but usually America leads the way there. But there's still no TV deal for F1 in beginning of 2026. Do you think they're hashing out deals, they're looking at multiple deals, or is this a cause of concern?
I got no idea. It seems weird to me that there wouldn't be, especially because Disney, who owns ESPN, just, like you mentioned, signed a massive branding deal. It's seems like a no-brainer. Okay, if you're trying to get all these people interested in Disney and or F1, you should also utilize your media outlets for the same thing. And so it makes sense. I mean, ESPN already has the rights to broadcast F1 races. They use Sky Sports network feed. So it seems odd to me that they wouldn't just sort of, at the very least, re-up that contract.
Yeah, ESPN gets decent numbers. It's still distant to NASCAR as far as racing goes, but they get decent numbers and it's a good demographic. They always say, the 18 to 49, which everybody on TV wants. The advertisers want that. From what I've heard, it's essentially ESPN saying, well, those things are good, but it's a global sport. Most Americans don't particularly care for global sports, and our viewing is always going to be limited because of that. So it's like, a race in Asia and Middle East, even the races in Europe, those are not at good times for most American viewers. So from what I understand, ESPN is like saying, hey, we'll sign a deal, but for like a package of races. So the American ones, maybe the European ones or some of those. So we'll see. I mean, and from F1, they probably are like, hey, we want to maximize this, but we also want to have multiple, like, the NFL model, multiple media companies sort of pitted against each other. So maybe they'll sell, all right, Amazon, and Amazon is heavily involved. You see all the Amazon stats and, they're the cloud software provider, I think. We'll get Amazon Prime. You can do some. ESPN, you can do some. Maybe they'll like try to hook up with a broadcast network like CBS, ABC. I don't know. So anyway, we'll see. Across the line, that's our segment where we try to predict the winners of the next race. The next race is next week in Monaco, the historic Monaco race, Monaco Grand Prix. In Across the Line, we make our predictions for the top 5. If our pick gets in the top 5, we get a point. If he gets in the exact right spot we predicted, we get 3 points. Now, next race, Monaco, I believe Charles Leclerc finally won that last year. I don't really make any predictions because it's so much based on qualifying that race, but can you give me the current standings, Patrick?
Indeed. So I had another big week.
Dang it.
Coming into this weekend, you were ahead 26 points to 18. Top 5 from this race was Max, Lando, Oscar, Lewis, and Alex Albon. Your prediction was Oscar, Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, Kimi Antonelli, Yuki Tsunoda. So you got 2 total points, one for Oscar, rough. One for Hamilton, both in the top 5, neither in their exact finishing position. My prediction was Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, George Russell, Alex Albon, Esteban Ocon. Oof. So I got 3 points each for Max and Lando, P1 and P2, and then a point for Alex Albon. So total all that up, that means you are now leading just 28 points to my 25.
Dang, that was a big jump. Dang it. And you even had Esteban Ocon. How the hell you Esteban Ocon? Motherfucker, he leaves Alpine for Haas. I mean, he didn't even leave. He got fired. And he goes to the little middling Haas. And that winds up being a much better decision. I mean, Alpine is just imploding. Every week there's another. I mean, I heard the team principal. Was it the team principal was doing? It was like his brother's involved in bag money and something going on in the Middle East, and they bring in Flavio Briatore. Was that how you say his last name? Flavio. He's one of those old school F1 hustlers. He's supposedly banned for life.
He's for sure in the mafia too. I think we're all aware.
Yeah, this is. I don't even know how he did it. He goes to Haas, he gets fired from Alpine, goes to Haas, and that turns out to be a promotion. So anyway, all right. For Monaco Across the Line, who goes first?
Oh, well, I guess that's me going first.
Dang.
So since I'm going first, and I like to be a little ridiculous sometimes, I'm gonna take Lewis Hamilton win for Ferrari in Monaco.
That would be something. Lewis Hamilton winning Monaco, Ferrari winning Monaco. That actually is a good one. So you know what? I go next. I'm going to take the converse. I'm taking Charles Leclerc to win it.
2 years in a row?
2 years in a row. And since Monaco is just sort of more of a coronation for the qualifying, I'm going to go with Oscar Piastri.
Nice. I'll take some easy picks here, maybe. I'll take Lando. And then I think he might have a nice comeback race. I'll take George Russell.
All right. Well, then I am going to take Max Verstappen. And Monaco is not technically Italy, but I'm going to take a former Ferrari driver, Carlos Sainz.
Nice. Let's see. Then I am going to take his teammate, Alex Albon, who's been driving well. And then in P5, for his first points of the season, Fernando Alonso.
Oh, nice. So you have for Monaco Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, George Russell, Alex Albon, and Fernando Alonso. I've got Charles Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz. I will next take Pierre Gasly.
Ooh.
After I slandered Alpine. Also next week, it's Memorial Weekend, Indy 500, maybe the world's most popular race, actually. And the big story this week is, well, it's expected to rain heavily, unfortunately. And cars going in an oval over 200 miles an hour in the rain, that's not good for anybody.
Well, I mean, there were a few guys that I thought were dead this weekend in qualifying. So
there were a couple, they just went flying.
Crazy.
It's like they might be going too fast, those cars, and those ovals. I mean, it's just speed.
Yeah, because the moment they get a little lift, they literally fly.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
But the other big story, former Ferrari reserve driver Robert Schwartzman, he took pole for the Prema team. And for those of you European F1 fans, that would be like if, I don't know, Ollie Behrman at Haas got pole in Monaco Grand Prix. I mean, that would be a big deal. So, anyway, man, it also just shows how brutal F1 is. I mean, he was a Ferrari driver. He came up through Ferrari Reserve, has all the talent. It's one of those rare sports where there are so many factors outside your control. How many openings are there this year in the sport? Which team did you come through? How much sponsor money do you got? It's just, there's so much out of your control. What a tough sport, because he absolutely could drive Schwartzman in F1. So. Any crazy predictions, Patrick?
So I was thinking about what would be the craziest thing that I could think of happening in a season. And I thought, well, the craziest thing I could think of happening is just like a race gets canceled for some insane reason. And so then I tried to think of some insane reasons for why this might occur. And what I came up with was the Brazilian Gabriel Bortoleto and the Argentinian Franco Colapinto continually get in scuffles throughout the season. By the way, Jack Doohan is never coming back. Well, we'll see. But this, my prediction hinges on the fact that he does not come back. And this leads to angry fandoms who basically create violent threats against these drivers, ultimately leading to the cancellation of the Sao Paulo Grand Prix in Brazil.
Oof. I mean, given some of the crazy social media, just insanity about these drivers, their families, I mean, I could see this happening. I don't want to, but some of these people,
people are crazy.
Turn away from the screen, go for a walk, read a book, fix yourself maybe a salad, chop up some vegetables, just it's not. Although you mentioned Colapinto, you mentioned Doohan, it's not so crazy, but my crazy prediction is, yes, they don't bring back Doohan. After 5 races, they fire Colapinto. And they just bring up some guy none of us knew. Like, where did they find this guy? And he's probably like, Fabio's, nephew's cousin's buddy, something like that. And it's just chaos. All right. I want to thank you all for listening to everybody's most beloved Father and Son F1 podcast. It is much appreciated. We hope you subscribe and tell a friend. And for now, we are lights out.
See ya. Thanks for listening.
You just finished listening to Hard Compound, recorded in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and around the world.